Blood-stained pages flutter in the dim light of a forgotten attic, whispering secrets of a killer long thought buried. A diary, its entries etched in ash ink, holds the key to murders that defy explanation. Each victim reduced to cinders, yet their final words preserved in flame-resistant parchment. Welcome to the Ashen Diary, pages written in murder. Poirot investigates. A chilling tale of deduction and darkness. Grab a cup of tea, take a seat, and immerse yourself in this suspenseful story. If you're hooked and enjoying the ride, hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us. Chapter 1. The Embers Awakening. In the quaint Belgian village of St. Mary's Hollow, nestled amid rolling hills and ancient oaks, the air hung heavy with the scent of autumn leaves and something far more sinister: smoke. It was a crisp October evening in 1925 when Hercule Poirot, the renowned detective with his impeccably waxed mustache and piercing gray eyes, received an urgent telegram from his old friend, Captain Arthur Hastings. "Come at once, Poirot," it read. "A diary of ashes has surfaced, and with it, a trail of fiery deaths. The police are baffled. Your little gray cells are needed." Poirot, ever the man of order and method, folded the telegram neatly before boarding the next train from London. As the locomotive chugged through the misty countryside, he pondered the peculiarities. Ashes and diaries. What manner of crime could blend the ephemeral with the eternal? Upon arrival, Poirot was met by Hastings at the station, the captain's face etched with worry lines deeper than usual. "It's good to see you, old chap," Hastings said, clapping Poirot on the back a bit too enthusiastically for the detective's liking. "But this case, it's unlike anything we've seen. 3 victims so far, all burned to death in locked rooms, no sign of arson, and each clutching a page from what appears to be the same diary." Poirot raised an eyebrow, his mind already whirring like a well-oiled machine. "Mon ami, tell me everything from the beginning. Order and method. That is how we shall unravel this web." They drove through the village in Hastings' motor car, the headlights cutting through the gathering fog like knives. St. Mary's Hollow was a picture of rural serenity: thatched cottages, a stone church with a towering steeple, and a central square where locals gathered for market days. But beneath the idol lurked fear. Windows were shuttered early, and whispers of a curse floated on the wind. Hastings explained that the first victim was Elias Thorne, a wealthy antiquarian who collected rare books. Found in his study, door bolted from inside, windows sealed, his body reduced to ash, yet a single page lay unscathed beside him, its edges singed, but words legible. "The fire claims the unworthy, but the truth endures in embers." The police dismissed it as spontaneous combustion, a freak accident, until the second death 2 weeks later. That was Matilda Voss, the village librarian, discovered in her archive room similarly incinerated. Again, a locked space, no fuel source, and another page. Secrets burn brightest in the dark. By the third victim, Reginald Blackwood, a historian researching local folklore, the pattern was undeniable. His attic office, secure tight, body to cinders, page reading, "From ashes rise the confessions of the damned." Each page seemed torn from an antique diary, the paper treated with some alchemical substance that resisted fire. Poirot listened intently, his fingers steepled under his chin. "These are not accidents, Hastings. They are murders most ingenious, designed to mimic the impossible, but nothing is impossible when one applies logic." At the local inn, the Flaming Hearth, ironically named, Poirot thought, they settled into a private parlor. The innkeeper, a stout woman named Mrs. Greer, served them steaming mugs of cocoa, her hands trembling slightly. "Terrible business, sir," she muttered. "Folks say it's the ghost of old Lady Ashworth, burned at the stake centuries ago for witchcraft. Her diary, they say, curses anyone who reads it." Poirot smiled politely. "Superstition is the enemy of reason, madame. But tell me, where was this diary found?" Mrs. Greer leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper. "In the ruins of Ashworth Manor, up on the hill.
Young Tommy Hale, the blacksmith's boy, dug it up while scavenging, sold pages to collectors like Thorne before vanishing himself. Poirot's eyes gleamed. An origin point. Excellent. The next morning, he and Hastings hiked to the manor ruins, overgrown with ivy and thorns. The site was a skeleton of stone walls, charred from a fire long ago. Poirot poked about with his silver-headed cane, uncovering faint score marks on the ground. "See here, Hastings, these are not from the old blaze. Recent disturbances." As they searched, a rustle in the bushes revealed a figure, a young woman in a hooded cloak, clutching a satchel. She bolted, but Hastings, ever the sportsman, gave chase and caught her gently by the arm. "Who are you, mademoiselle?" Poirot demanded, approaching with calm authority. She lowered her hood, revealing striking green eyes and auburn hair. "Isabella Thorne," she said defiantly. "Elias was my uncle. I'm no thief. I was looking for clues to his death." Isabella explained she was a budding journalist, convinced the diary held answers. She'd found a loose page in her uncle's effects. "The Ashen words will consume the liars." Poirot acknowledged approvingly. "You have spirit, mademoiselle. Perhaps you can assist us. But first, show me this page." Back at the inn, they examined it under lamplight. The paper was thick, almost leathery, with faded ink that smelled faintly of sulfur. Poirot used a magnifying glass, noting tiny symbols in the margins, alchemical runes for fire and preservation. "This is no ordinary diary," he mused. "It was crafted to survive flames, perhaps by Lady Ashworth herself. But why tear it apart? And how do the victims ignite without source?" Hastings suggested electrical faults or hidden devices, but Poirot said, "No, it is psychological or perhaps chemical. We must interview the families." Their first stop was the Thorne estate, a grand house filled with dusty tomes. Elias's widow, Beatrice, a frail woman in mourning black, received them tearfully. "He was obsessed with that page," she said. "Read it obsessively, muttering about curses. The night he died, I heard him scream, then smelled smoke, but the door was locked." Poirot inspected the study. No vents, no wires, just bookshelves and a fireplace cold for months. A practical tip for aspiring detectives, he thought out loud. Always check for residues. Swabbing the floor, he found traces of a powdery substance. Potassium something, perhaps. "Hastings, note this for analysis." Next, the Voss Library, a cozy building stacked with volumes. The archivist's assistant, Mr. Finch, a nervous man with spectacles, recounted Matilda's final days. She was researching local history, especially the witch trials. That page arrived anonymously. She pored over it. Then, poof, gone in flames. Poirot found similar powder traces near her desk. Pattern emerging. Victims receive pages, study them, and then combust in isolation. At Blackwood's home, the historian's son, young Edgar, shared tales of his father's fascination with folklore. He said the diary revealed hidden truths about the village founders, murders covered up. Again, the powder. Poirot pieced it. The pages were laced with a self-igniting compound activated by heat or friction from handling. But how targeted? And who sent them? As dusk fell, a fourth page arrived at the inn, addressed to Poirot himself. The detective dances with fire. Soon he burns. Enclosed was a diary entry detailing a 17th-century murder. Poirot felt a chill, not fear, but excitement. "The killer knows we are close," he said. Isabella, now part of their impromptu team, gasped. "We must find the full diary." Wrapping up this initial foray, Poirot retired to his room, mind abuzz. The embers of mystery were stirring, promising revelations in the chapters ahead. But for now, the ash-laden puzzle had claimed its first hold on the detective's unyielding logic, setting the stage for deeper dives into the village's shadowed past.
Chapter 2: Shadows in the Ruins. The morning sun barely pierced the fog that clung to St. Mary's Hollow, casting the ruins of Ashworth Manor in a ghostly pallor.
Hercule Poirot, clad in a pristine overcoat despite the muddy terrain, stood at the edge of the crumbled estate, his sharp eyes scanning the jagged stones. Hastings and Isabella trailed behind, the latter clutching her satchel as if it held the answers to the universe. The air was thick with damp earth and a faint acrid tang that made Poirot's nose twitch. The threatening note from the previous night weighed heavily on his mind. Its words, "The detective dances with fire," a taunt he couldn't ignore. Yet fear was a stranger to Poirot. This was a challenge to his little grey cells, and he relished it. Isabella broke the silence, her voice steady despite the eerie setting. "My uncle mentioned this place often. He said the manor held secrets the village wanted buried." Poirot nodded, tapping his cane against a blackened foundation stone. "Secrets, mademoiselle, are like weeds. They grow in the cracks of silence. We shall uproot them." He gestured toward a collapsed archway, half hidden by brambles. "Hastings, assist me. We search for the diary's resting place." They combed the ruins methodically, Poirot's meticulous nature guiding their efforts. Broken glass crunched underfoot, and charred beams jutted like bones from the earth. Hastings, ever eager, tugged at a rusted iron grate near what once was a cellar. It gave way with a groan, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "Good heavens, Poirot, a hidden chamber!" he exclaimed. Poirot's moustache twitched with approval. "Excellent, mon ami, but caution, our adversary plays with fire." Armed with lanterns, the trio descended. The air grew colder, heavier, as if the manor itself exhaled centuries of grief. The cellar was a labyrinth of stone alcoves, each lined with shelves that once held treasures. Now, cobwebs and dust reigned. Isabella spotted a faint outline in the wall, a concealed panel. Poirot's nimble fingers traced its edges, finding a latch. With a click, it swung open, revealing a small cavity. Inside lay a leather-bound book, its cover etched with the same alchemical runes as the pages. "The Ashen diary," Isabella whispered, her eyes wide. Poirot lifted it with gloved hands, noting its weight and the faint warmth it seemed to radiate. "This is no ordinary relic," he murmured, opening it to reveal pages yellowed but intact, written in a flowing script. The entries spoke of Lady Ashworth, accused of witchcraft in 1652, her trial a mockery orchestrated by village elders. She was no witch, Poirot read aloud, but a scholar of forbidden sciences. Her diary was her confession and her vengeance. Each entry detailed experiments with fire-resistant compounds and cryptic warnings about betrayers. Hastings frowned. "Vengeance? You think her spirit's behind this?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "No, Hastings. Spirits do not tear pages or lace them with chemicals. A living hand guides this chaos." As they studied the diary, a faint scratching echoed from deeper in the cellar. Isabella froze. What was that? Before Poirot could respond, a shadow darted across the lantern's glow, a figure, cloaked in black, vanishing into a tunnel. Hastings gave chase, but Poirot held up a hand. "No, mon ami, we have what we came for. Let the shadow run, for now." Back at the inn, they pored over the diary under lamplight. The entries grew darker, detailing a pact among village founders to frame Lady Ashworth for their own crimes, murders disguised as accidents. One name recurred, Blackwood, an ancestor of the third victim. "The past bleeds into the present," Poirot said. "Our killer seeks to expose or avenge these ancient sins." Isabella pointed to a passage about a hidden vault beneath the church, rumored to hold evidence of the founder's guilt. If we find it, we might uncover who's targeting these families. Poirot agreed, but his mind lingered on the cloaked figure. Was it Tommy Hale, the missing boy who'd found the diary? Or someone closer, watching their every move? A knock at the door interrupted them. Mrs. Greer, the innkeeper, stood pale-faced, holding a new page. "It came in the post, sir, addressed to you." The message read, "Seek the vault, and the flames will find you." Poirot's lips curled slightly. Our adversary grows bold, sending invitations to their own trap. He tucked the page into his pocket, already plotting their next move. The church loomed in his mind, its steeple a silent sentinel over the village's secrets. As night fell, the diary seemed to hum with a life of its own, its words a map to both truth and danger.
Chapter 3. The Vault of Whispers. The church of St. Mary's Hollow stood like a stone guardian at the village's heart, its steeple piercing the dawn mist. Hercule Poirot, Hastings, and Isabella approached its weathered oak doors, the Ashen diary tucked securely in Poirot's satchel. The latest page's warning, "Seek the vault and the flames will find you," echoed in their minds, but Poirot's calm demeanor steadied their nerves. His polished shoes clicked on the cobblestone path, a stark contrast to the grim task ahead. "The church holds secrets older than the manor," he said, his voice low. "We must tread carefully, for the past is watching." Inside, the air was cool and heavy with the scent of wax and ancient wood. Stained glass windows cast fractured colors across the pews, painting the stone floor in hues of blood and gold. The vicar, a frail man named Reverend Lyle, greeted them with a wary nod. "Miss Thorne, gentlemen," he said, adjusting his spectacles. "I heard you were poking about the manor. Dangerous business, stirring old ghosts." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Not ghosts, Reverend, but truths. Tell me of the vault beneath this church." Lyle's face paled, but he led them to a side chapel where a faded tapestry hung. Behind it, a trap door lay flush with the floor, its edges worn smooth by time. "Few know of this," Lyle whispered. "It's been sealed since the witch trials. The elders forbade its opening." Isabella's jaw tightened. "My uncle believed it held proof of the village's shame." Poirot gestured for Hastings to lift the trapdoor, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness. Lanterns in hand, they descended, the air growing dank and oppressive. The vault was a cavernous chamber, its walls carved with symbols matching those in the diary, runes of fire and secrecy. In the center stood a stone chest, its lid engraved with a warning, "Let the guilty remain buried." Hastings hesitated, but Poirot's resolve was unshaken. "Open it," he instructed. Inside were brittle documents, ledgers listing names and dates, records of the 1652 trials. One entry caught Isabella's eye. Ashworth betrayed by Blackwood, Voss, and Thorne. Their blood sealed her fate. Poirot's fingers traced the faded ink. These families, our victims' ancestors, conspired to condemn Lady Ashworth. The killer targets their descendants, using the diary to expose their sins. Hastings frowned. "But how do they know who's guilty? And why the fires?" Before Poirot could answer, a faint hiss filled the air, followed by the acrid smell of smoke. A spark flared in the corner, igniting a trail of powder along the floor. "Out!" Poirot shouted, shoving Isabella toward the stairs. They scrambled up as flames licked the walls, the heat chasing them. Emerging into the chapel, they found Reverend Lyle gone, the church eerily silent. Hastings coughed, his face smudged with soot. "That was no accident. Someone knew we were here." Poirot's gaze hardened. "Indeed, mon ami, the killer is close, perhaps among those we've met."
Isabella clutched a ledger she'd grabbed from the chest, its pages detailing land deals and murders disguised as accidents, all tied to the founders. Back at the inn, they spread the ledger on the table. It revealed a pact. The founders had stolen Ashworth's alchemical knowledge, using it to amass wealth while framing her for their crimes. The pages of the diary, Poirot mused, are not just confessions, they're bait, laced with a compound that ignites when handled too long. Isabella's eyes widened. So the killer sends them to descendants, knowing they'll study them and burn? Poirot nodded. A poetic justice, but we must find the source of these pages. A sudden commotion outside drew their attention. A crowd had gathered in the square, murmuring about a new fire. Poirot led the way, finding a small blaze in an alley, quickly doused by locals. At its center lay another page, unburned. The truth is a spark. It consumes all. Nearby, a boy's cap lay in the dirt. Tommy Hales, the missing lad who'd found the diary. "He's alive," Isabella whispered, hope flickering. Poirot's expression remained grim. Or a pawn in a larger game. As they returned to the inn, a figure watched from the shadows, a man with a scarred hand, clutching a match. The church's secrets had been breached, but the flames of vengeance were far from extinguished, drawing Poirot deeper into the village's tangled web.
Chapter 4. The Scar of Vengeance. The dawn light filtered weakly through the inn's windows, casting long shadows across the parlor where Hercule Poirot, Hastings, and Isabella sat, the ledger from the church vault spread before them. The air was thick with tension, the memory of the alley fire and Tommy Hale's cap lingering like a specter. Poirot's fingers drummed lightly on the table, his mind dissecting the latest clue. The page that read, "The truth is a spark. It consumes all." "Our killer is not merely punishing," he said, his voice steady. "They are staging a spectacle, leaving breadcrumbs to taunt us." Isabella's eyes, red from sleeplessness, burned with determination. "Then we follow them. Tommy might still be out there." Poirot decided their next move was to track the boy. They headed to the blacksmith's forge where Tommy's father, Mr. Hale, worked. The forge was a cavern of heat and iron, its bellows hissing like an angry beast. Hale, a burly man with soot-streaked arms, paused his hammering when they entered. "Haven't seen Tommy in weeks," he growled, his voice raw. "He was always scavenging, selling bits of junk from the manor. Said he found something valuable, then vanished." Poirot's gaze flicked to a pile of tools in the corner, noting a leather glove with a singed edge. "Monsieur, did Tommy ever mention a man with a scarred hand?" Hale's hammer froze midair. "How do you know? He said some bloke bought a page off him, had a scar like he'd been burned bad." Hastings exchanged a glance with Poirot, who pressed further. "This man, did Tommy describe him?" Hale shook his head, but his eyes darted nervously. "Just said he paid well and warned Tommy to keep quiet. I thought it was nothing, till he didn't come home." Isabella stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "Mr. Hale, we found his cap last night. He might be in danger. Help us." Reluctantly, Hale handed over a sketch Tommy had drawn, a crude map of the woods beyond the village, marked with an X near a place called Raven's Hollow. "He was always poking around there," he said. "It was his secret spot." Poirot tucked the sketch into his pocket, his mind already mapping their path. "Merci, monsieur. We shall find your son." The woods were dense, the air sharp with pine and decay. Raven's Hollow was a sunken clearing, ringed by gnarled trees that seemed to lean inward, guarding their secrets. At the center stood a crumbling well, its stones moss-covered and slick. Hastings peered into its depths, his lantern revealing only shadows. "Looks abandoned," he said, but Poirot kneeled, examining the ground. Fresh footprints circled the well, and a faint chemical scent lingered, sulfur, like the diary pages. "Someone was here recently," Poirot said, "and they left us a gift." Tied to a nearby branch was a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside was another diary page, its words chilling. "The scarred hand strikes where shadows fall." Beneath it lay a vial of gray powder, identical to the residue found at the crime scenes. Isabella gasped. "It's a trap. They knew we'd come." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Oui, mademoiselle, but traps reveal the trapper. This powder is our key. It ignites the victims, but how is it triggered?" As they debated, a rustle broke the silence. A boy's figure darted from the trees, Tommy Hale, pale and wide-eyed. "You shouldn't be here," he hissed, glancing over his shoulder. "He'll see you." Before Poirot could question him, Tommy bolted again, vanishing into the underbrush. Hastings started to pursue, but Poirot stopped him. "No, let him run. He is frightened, not guilty. We must learn who he is." They returned to the village, the vial and page in hand. At the inn, Poirot enlisted Isabella's help to analyze the powder, using a small chemistry kit he carried for such occasions. Under a magnifying glass, it shimmered with metallic flecks, potassium permanganate mixed with a catalyst designed to ignite with prolonged contact or heat. "Ingenious," Poirot murmured. "The pages are coded, and the victims, in their obsession, handle them until they burn." Hastings frowned. "But who's delivering them? And why Tommy?" A knock interrupted them. It was Reverend Lyle, his face ashen. "I saw something last night, after you left the church." He stammered. "A man in a cloak, near the graveyard. He had a scarred hand, dropped a match as he fled." Poirot's mustache twitched. "The graveyard, you say? Then that is our next destination." As they prepared to leave, another page arrived, slipped under the door. "Bury the truth, and it rises in flames." The game was escalating, and the scarred man was drawing them deeper into his fiery web.
Chapter 5. The Graveyard's Secret. The graveyard of St. Mary's Hollow lay shrouded in twilight mist, its crooked headstones jutting like teeth from the earth. Hercule Poirot led the way, his cane tapping rhythmically against the gravel path, with Hastings and Isabella close behind. The latest diary page, "Bury the Truth, and it rises in flames," was tucked safely in Poirot's coat, its words a grim promise of answers or danger. The vicar's sighting of the scarred man lingered in their minds, and the chill air seemed to hum with unseen eyes watching. "This place," Poirot said softly, "is where the village hides its dead and its guilt." The graveyard sprawled behind the church, its oldest section a maze of moss-covered stones bearing names of the village's founding families. Isabella scanned the inscriptions, her journalist's instincts sharp. "Look here," she said, pointing to a weathered slab marked Ashworth, 1652. "It's her, Lady Ashworth. No first name, just a warning, 'Cursed be those who disturb her rest.'" Poirot knelt, brushing dirt from the stone. "Curious," he murmured. "The earth here is loose, recently disturbed." Using his cane, he probed the soil, uncovering a hidden compartment beneath the slab, a small iron box, rusted but intact. Hastings pried it open, revealing a bundle of letters tied with twine. The paper was brittle, but the ink was clear, written in the same flowing script as the diary. The letters detailed accusations against Lady Ashworth, penned by the ancestors of Thorne, Voss, and Blackwood, claiming she'd bewitched the village with her alchemical experiments. One letter stood out, signed by a certain Edmund Blackwood. "Her knowledge must be ours, her name erased." "They stole her work," Isabella whispered, "and burned her to cover it." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Oui, mademoiselle, these letters confirmed the ledger's tale, a conspiracy to seize her secrets. Our killer uses this history, targeting the heirs." As they examined the find, a faint glow flickered in the distance, near a cluster of yew trees. Hastings tensed. "Fire!" he hissed. They hurried toward it, finding a small pile of leaves smoldering, another diary page at its center, unburned. "The grave yields truth, but fire claims the seekers." Beside it lay a single match, its tip freshly struck. "Whoever left this was here moments ago," Isabella said, her voice tight. Poirot scanned the shadows, his mind racing. "They are watching, playing cat and mouse. But why lead us here?" He pocketed the page and match, noting their sulphurous scent matched the vial from Raven Hollow. The scarred man was orchestrating a deadly performance, each clue a step closer to their own peril. A sudden cry pierced the silence. Tommy Hale's voice, faint but unmistakable from the woods beyond the graveyard. "Help!" it echoed.
Hastings bolted toward the sound, Poirot and Isabella following. They found Tommy crouched behind a gravestone, his face streaked with dirt and fear. "He's after me," the boy stammered. "The man with the scar, he said I'd burn if I talked." Poirot knelt beside him, voice calm but firm. "Who, Tommy? Describe him." Tommy's eyes darted wildly. Tall, cloaked, scar on his left hand. "He gave me money for the diary pages, said they'd right old wrongs, but then he chased me." Before Poirot could press further, footsteps crunched nearby, heavy and deliberate. Tommy gasped and fled again, vanishing into the trees. The trio gave chase but found only a discarded cloak, singed at the hem, lying in a clearing. Back at the inn, they regrouped. The letters a new page spread before them. Poirot's fingers traced the latest message, his mind piecing together the puzzle. "The scarred man knows the village's sins," he said. "He uses the diary to expose them. But his method, fire, suggests a personal wound, a descendant, perhaps, of Lady Ashworth herself." Isabella frowned. "But who in the village could it be? Everyone's terrified." A knock at the door startled them. It was Mrs. Greer, the innkeeper. Her face pale. "A man came by, left this for you," she said, handing Poirot a sealed envelope. Inside was another page. "The fire of justice burns brightest at midnight." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Midnight, then," he said. "Our adversary sets the stage. We shall meet them there." The graveyard had revealed its secrets, but the scarred man's game was far from over, pulling Poirot and his allies deeper into a blaze of vengeance and truth.
Chapter 6. The Midnight Reckoning. The clock in the inn's parlor ticked towards midnight, each second a pulse in the tense silence that enveloped Hercule Poirot, Hastings, and Isabella. The latest diary page, "The fire of justice burns brightest at midnight," lay on the table, its words a summons to a confrontation. Poirot's eyes, sharp as ever, gleamed with anticipation. "Our adversary grows impatient," he said, adjusting his tie. "They wish to meet us, but on their terms. We shall oblige, but with caution." Isabella clutched the ledger from the church vault, her resolve unwavering. "If Tommy's still out there, we have to go." Hastings nodded, checking his pocket watch. "Let's not keep the scarred man waiting." They set out for the graveyard, lanterns dimmed to avoid drawing attention. The village was hushed, its streets cloaked in a fog that swirled like ghosts. The church loomed ahead, its steeple a dark silhouette against the moonless sky. Poirot led them to the oldest section of the graveyard, near Lady Ashworth's tomb, where the air felt charged, as if the ground itself held its breath. "Stay alert," he whispered, his cane poised like a weapon. As midnight struck, a faint glow flickered among the tombstones, not a fire, but a lantern's soft light. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, cloaked, the scarred hand unmistakable as it held a leather satchel. "You've been diligent, Monsieur Poirot," the man said, his voice low and gravelly, tinged with a local accent. "But you're meddling in a justice older than your laws." Poirot stepped forward, undaunted. "Justice does not burn innocent lives, monsieur. Reveal yourself." The man lowered his hood, exposing a weathered face, one cheek marred by a burn scar that snaked down to his hand. "I am Gideon Ashworth, last of her line. My ancestor's diary was her legacy, stolen and buried by thieves. I'm merely reclaiming it." Isabella gasped. "You're killing people." Gideon's eyes darkened. "Not people, descendants of murderers. They profited from her death, hiding their crimes in wealth and lies." Hastings bristled, but Poirot raised a hand. "You lace the pages with a chemical, oui? A compound that ignites when handled, targeting those who study them." Gideon smirked. "Clever detective. Potassium permanganate and a catalyst. Her formula, perfected. They burn as she did, their guilt exposed." Poirot's gaze was steady. "And Tommy Hale, is he your pawn or your prisoner?" Gideon's expression faltered. "The boy was a means to an end. He found the diary, sold its pages. I paid him to keep silent, but he's grown troublesome."
Before Poirot could press further, a scream echoed from the woods, Tommy's voice raw with panic. Gideon bolted, dropping his satchel. Hastings lunged after him, but the man vanished into the fog. The satchel held more pages, each a venomous recounting of the founder's betrayals, laced with the deadly powder. One entry stood out. "The final fire will cleanse the village at the manor's heart." Isabella's eyes widened. "He's planning something bigger." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. A grand act, perhaps to destroy the evidence, or the village itself. They searched the woods for Tommy, finding only his torn jacket near a stream. Tracks led back towards Ashworth Manor, suggesting Gideon had taken him there. Poirot's mustache twitched. "The manor is his stage, where this drama began. We must follow." As they prepared to leave, the church bell tolled once, an ominous note in the night. Another page lay at the graveyard's edge, left as if daring them to pursue. "The heart of the manor burns at dawn." Back at the inn, they pored over the new pages. Gideon's plan was clear: a final fire to expose the village's sins, using the manor as a pyre. "He's no mere avenger," Poirot said. "He is a fanatic, consumed by his ancestors' pain." Isabella clutched Tommy's jacket, her voice fierce. "We have to save Tommy before it's too late." Hastings agreed, loading his revolver. "Dawn's not far off. We'll meet him head-on." The graveyard had unmasked their foe, but the scarred man's vengeance was building to a crescendo, drawing Poirot and his allies towards a fiery dawn at the manor's ruins.
Chapter 7. The Manor's Last Stand. The pre-dawn air was sharp with frost as Hercule Poirot, Hastings, and Isabella trekked toward the ruins of Ashworth Manor, the latest diary page's warning etched in their minds. The heart of the manor burns at dawn. The sky was a bruised purple, casting jagged shadows across the crumbling stones ahead. Tommy Hale's torn jacket, clutched tightly by Isabella, was a grim reminder of the stakes. Poirot's face was set, his gray cells working furiously. "Gideon Ashworth seeks a finale," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. "But we shall rewrite his script." The manor loomed, its skeletal walls clawing at the sky. The trio moved cautiously, lanterns low to avoid detection. The scent of sulfur hung heavy, mingling with the damp earth. Poirot's cane traced faint lines in the dirt, fresh tracks leading to a collapsed wing of the manor, where a faint glow pulsed. "There," he whispered, pointing to a makeshift entrance boarded loosely with planks. Hastings pried them apart, revealing a cavernous hall, its floor littered with debris and the faint shimmer of scattered powder. Inside, the air was thick with the promise of fire. Barrels lined the walls, their lids marked with alchemical runes. Gideon's stockpile of the deadly compound. In the center, bound to a chair, was Tommy Hale, gagged and wide-eyed. Above him, a rigged lantern dangled, its wick burning low, poised to ignite a trail of powder at any moment. Isabella stifled a gasp, but Poirot's hand on her arm kept her still. "Silence, mademoiselle. We are not alone." A low laugh echoed from the shadows. Gideon Ashworth stepped into the light, his scarred hand gripping a match. "You're punctual, Poirot," he said, his voice cold. "Welcome to the final reckoning. This manor, built on my ancestors' stolen legacy, will burn, and with it, the village's lies." Poirot's eyes locked onto his. "And the boy, is his death part of your justice?" Gideon's jaw tightened. Collateral. He saw too much. Hastings edged closer to Tommy, but Gideon raised the match. One move, and the spark falls. Poirot stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. "Monsieur Ashworth, your ancestor sought knowledge, not vengeance. These murders, Thorne, Voss, Blackwood, do they honor her, or do they stain her name further?"
Gideon hesitated, his scarred hand trembling. They profited from her death. Their bloodlines carry the guilt. Isabella spoke, her voice steady despite her fear. But you're not her judge. You're using her pain to justify your own. For a moment, Gideon's resolution wavered, but he struck the match, its flame flaring bright. Enough talk. The fire will speak. He tossed it toward the powder trail, but Poirot was faster, kicking a loose plank to block the spark. It fizzled harmlessly against the wood. Hastings seized the moment, tackling Gideon to the ground. The man fought like a cornered animal, his strength fueled by rage. But Hastings pinned him, wrenching the satchel from his grip. Isabella rushed to Tommy, cutting his bonds with a pocket knife. The boy sobbed, clinging to her. He was gonna burn it all, he stammered. Poirot examined the lantern's rig, a crude timer, set to ignite the barrels at dawn. He doused the wick with a flask of water from his satchel. Ingenious, but flawed. Your plan ends here, Gideon. As Hastings bound Gideon's hands, Poirot found another diary page in the satchel. The fire cleanses, but the truth endures. Unlike the others, it was untainted with powder, a final confession rather than a trap. It detailed Gideon's lineage, his discovery of the diary, and his descent into obsession. He believed he was her avenger, Poirot said, folding the page, but vengeance blinds as much as it reveals. They escorted Gideon and Tommy back to the village, the first rays of dawn breaking over the hills. The manor stood silent, its threatened blaze averted. But Poirot's mind lingered on the diary itself, still incomplete, its remaining pages hidden somewhere in the village. We have our killer, but the diary's secrets are not yet fully uncovered. Isabella nodded, Tommy safe beside her. There's more to this story, isn't there? Poirot's mustache twitched. Always, mademoiselle. Always.
Chapter 8. The Unfinished Pages. The morning sun bathed St. Mary's Hollow in a deceptive calm as Hercule Poirot, Hastings, and Isabella returned to the inn, Gideon Ashworth in custody, and Tommy Hale safely reunited with his father. The air still carried the faint sting of sulfur, a reminder of the manor's near destruction. Poirot sat at the parlor table, the Ashen diary open before him, its latest untainted page, "The fire cleanses, but the truth endures," a stark confession of Gideon's motives. Yet Poirot's brow furrowed. The diary was incomplete, several pages still missing. "The killer is caught," he said, his voice measured, "but the diary's full tale remains hidden. We must find the remaining pages." Isabella, nursing a cup of tea, looked troubled. "Gideon acted alone, didn't he? Why are there still pages out there?" Hastings, pacing by the window, added, "And who's sending them? Someone else must know about the diary." Poirot's fingers steepled under his chin. "Exactement, mon ami. Gideon was the hand of vengeance, but another mind may have guided him or continues the game." He turned to Tommy, now wrapped in a blanket, his eyes still wide with fear. "Tell us, jeune homme, where did you find the diary?" Tommy's voice trembled. "In the manor ruins, under a loose stone in the old library. There was a box sealed tight with the diary and some loose pages. I sold a few to Mr. Thorne, then that starred man, Gideon, bought the rest, but I swear I didn't see anyone else." Poirot's gaze softened, but remained probing. "And this box, did you leave anything behind?" Tommy nodded. "Some papers, too brittle to touch. I left them there." Poirot decided their next move was to revisit the manor's library ruins. The trio, now joined by a reluctant Tommy, trekked back to the crumbling estate. The library was a hollowed-out shell, its roof long gone, bookshelves reduced to charred splinters. Poirot knelt by a cracked flagstone Tommy pointed to, prying it up with his cane. Beneath lay a rusted tin box, its lid engraved with a single rune, protection. Inside were 3 more diary pages,
their edges curled but unburned, written in Lady Ashworth's hand. The first read, "My knowledge was my crime, my silence their shield." The second, "The village thrives on stolen fire." The third, "Seek the keeper of secrets, for they hold the final key." Isabella frowned. Keeper of secrets? Who could that be? Poirot's eyes narrowed. Someone who knows the diary's history, perhaps someone who watched Gideon's actions unfold. They searched the library further, finding faint scratches on a nearby wall. Initials, E.L., carved recently. "Edmund Lyle," muttered Hastings. "The vicar?" Poirot nodded. Reverend Lyle spoke of the vault and saw the scarred man. His knowledge is convenient. They hurried to the church, finding Reverend Lyle in the vestry, polishing candlesticks with nervous precision. His spectacles slipped as Poirot entered, holding the new pages. "Reverend, these were found in the manor. You know more than you've shared. We?" Lyle's hands shook. I meant no harm. Years ago, I found records in the church archives, hints of the Ashworth conspiracy. I told no one. But Gideon, he came to me, asking for the diary. I thought he only sought history." Poirot's voice was sharp. "And these pages, did you send them?" Lyle shook his head frantically. "No. But I saw someone near the manor last week, slipping papers into a hollow tree. I thought it was Gideon." Isabella stepped forward. "Who else knew about the diary's hiding place?" Lyle hesitated, then whispered, "Mrs. Greer. She's lived here all her life, knows every rumor. She brought me old books once, mentioned Ashworth's curse." The innkeeper's name sent a chill through the group. They returned to the flaming hearth, confronting Mrs. Greer in the kitchen. Her stout frame stiffened as Poirot laid the pages before her. "Madame, you've been delivering these, no?" Her eyes darted, but she sighed, defeated. "Not to harm," she said. "I found pages in the manor years ago, kept them safe. When Gideon started his fires, I sent them to you, hoping you'd stop him. I never meant for deaths." Poirot's mustache twitched. "You played a dangerous game, madame." He turned to his companions. "The diary's truth is nearly complete, but the keeper of secrets, Mrs. Greer, has one more tale to tell." As they pressed her for details, a new page slid under the door. "The final truth lies where the fire began." The mystery was closing, but its heart still burned.
Chapter 9. The Heart of the Flame. The latest diary page, "The final truth lies where the fire began," lay on the inn's parlor table, its words a cryptic beacon in the dim light of late morning. Hercule Poirot, Hastings, and Isabella stood around it, their faces etched with urgency. Mrs. Greer's confession had shifted the puzzle, revealing her as an unwitting accomplice, but the page's arrival suggested another hand was still at play. Poirot's eyes gleamed with determination. "The fire began with Lady Ashworth," he said, his voice steady. "Her execution site is our destination." Hastings nodded, gripping his revolver, while Isabella's jaw tightened. "Let's end this." The village records, cross-referenced with the ledger, pointed to a clearing on the outskirts of St. Mary's Hollow, where Lady Ashworth had been burned at the stake in 1652. The trio set out, the autumn wind biting at their coats as they crossed fields dotted with gnarled stumps. The clearing was a desolate patch, ringed by ancient oaks, its center marked by a blackened stone slab, weathered but bearing faint scorch marks. "This is where she died," Isabella whispered, her voice heavy with the weight of history. Poirot knelt, examining the slab. Beneath a layer of dirt, he uncovered a hidden groove, revealing a small cavity. Inside was a single diary page, its ink vivid despite centuries. "My death was their theft, my fire their fortune. The keeper's blood seals the truth." The keeper again,
Hastings said, frowning. Mrs. Greer? Poirot shook his head. No, mon ami. She was a courier, not the mastermind. The true keeper knows the diary's full power. As they studied the page, a faint crackle broke the silence, a spark flaring at the clearing's edge. A line of powder ignited, racing toward a pile of dry branches stacked nearby. Hastings lunged, stamping out the flame before it reached the tinder. Another trap? He growled. Poirot's gaze swept the trees, catching a glint of movement, a figure slipping away, cloaked, but not Gideon. We are watched, and the game is not over. They followed the figure's trail into the woods, finding a hidden camp, a tarp shelter, scattered papers, and a vial of the familiar gray powder. Among the papers was a letter, unsigned, but in a neat, modern hand. The Ashworth line lives. The village will pay. Isabella's eyes widened. Another Ashworth? Gideon said he was the last. Poirot's mustache twitched. He believed so, but lineage is a tangled web. Someone else claims her legacy. A rustle drew their attention. Reverend Lyle emerged from the trees, his face pale and hands trembling. I followed you, he stammered. I saw someone here last night leaving that page. I swear, I only wanted to help. Poirot's eyes narrowed. You appear often, Reverend, at convenient moments. What else do you know? Lyle hesitated, then confessed. My great-grandmother was an Ashworth, a cousin to Gideon's line. I found her journals in the church, hinting at a surviving heir, a woman hidden in the village. Isabella gasped. A woman? Who? Before Lyle could answer, a scream echoed from the village, Mrs. Greer's voice raw with terror. They raced back to the inn, finding the kitchen in chaos. Mrs. Greer stood, clutching her arm, singed by a small fire now extinguished. It was her, she cried, Beatrice Thorne, Elias's widow. She threw powder at me, said I'd betrayed the truth. Poirot's mind raced. Beatrice, the frail widow, had been silent, overlooked. Her maiden name, he demanded. Mrs. Greer whispered, Ashworth. They stormed to the Thorne estate, finding Beatrice in the study, surrounded by alchemical texts and a final diary page. The fire ends where it began, with blood. She turned, her eyes blazing with a fanatic's zeal. You can't stop it. I am the last Ashworth, the true heir. Gideon was my tool, but I wield the diary's power. Poirot stepped forward, unflinching. Your fire has burned enough, madame. The truth is exposed. Your ancestors' pain, your family's guilt. Beatrice laughed, raising a vial of powder, but Hastings tackled her, knocking it to the floor. The vial cracked, but Poirot swiftly doused it with a pitcher of water. No more flames, he said. As they restrained her, the final page's words sank in. The truth was out, but at what cost? The clearing had revealed the mastermind, but one question lingered. Was the diary's curse truly extinguished?
Chapter 10. The Ashes of Truth. The Thorne estate loomed under the midday sun, its grand facade hiding the storm brewing within. Hercule Poirot, Hastings, Isabella, and Reverend Lyle burst into the study, where Beatrice Thorne stood defiant, the final diary page clutched in her hand like a talisman. Her mourning black dress seemed a fitting shroud for the revelations to come. The room was a testament to obsession, shelves lined with alchemical tomes, a workbench scattered with vials of gray powder, and the full Ashen diary reassembled on the desk, its pages a mosaic of vengeance and history. Poirot's piercing gaze fixed on her. Madame Beatrice, or should I say, Madame Ashworth. Your game of fire and shadows ends now. The little gray cells have unraveled your web. Beatrice's lips curled into a bitter smile, her eyes reflecting a madness forged in centuries of inherited grudge. You think you've won, detective? The fire was never just about death. It was about rebirth. My maiden name is Ashworth, yes, the direct line from Lady Ilara Ashworth, hidden through marriages and secrets to evade the village's hunters. I married Elias Thorne not for love, but for access to the family that started it all. Hastings tightened his grip on his revolver, while Isabella's face paled with realization. You killed your own husband? She whispered. Poirot nodded slowly, piecing it aloud for all to hear. Oui, mademoiselle. Beatrice orchestrated everything. She discovered the diary in the family vaults years ago, piecing together the conspiracy. Her ancestor, Lady Ilara Ashworth, was a brilliant alchemist, developing compounds for fire resistance and controlled ignition, knowledge stolen by the Thorne, Voss, and Blackwood families. They framed her as a witch, burned her alive, and used her secrets to build their fortunes. Fireproof materials for industry, hidden explosives for mining rights. The village prospered on her ashes. Beatrice laughed, a hollow sound that echoed off the walls. Exactly! They condemned her to flames, but her diary survived, treated with her own formula. I revived her work, perfecting the powder, potassium permanganate blended with a delayed catalyst, activated by body heat and friction from obsessive reading. I sent the pages anonymously, knowing their curiosity about history would doom them. Elias first, poring over his rare find in his locked study. Matilda Voss, the librarian, couldn't resist the puzzle. Reginald Blackwood, digging into folklore, each burned from within, their rooms sealed to mimic the impossible. Reverend Lyle stepped forward, his voice trembling. I suspected, but I was afraid. My own Ashworth blood. I helped hide the lineage records in the church. Poirot turned to him. You were complicit in silence, Reverend, but not in murder. Beatrice used Gideon, her distant cousin, as her enforcer. She fed him pages, convinced him he was the last heir, manipulated his scars, from a childhood accident she perhaps engineered, to fuel his rage. Gideon handled the deliveries, the traps at the manor and graveyard, believing it his mission. But Beatrice pulled the strings, sending us clues to draw us in, testing if we could uncover the truth without stopping her final act. Isabella's eyes flashed with anger. What final act? The village? Beatrice's smile faded. A grand cleansing. I rigged the old mill with enough powder to ignite the entire square at midnight, exposing the founder's sins in a blaze that would force the world to see. But you meddled, following the breadcrumbs I left, the pages, the vial, even Tommy's involvement to spread fear. Tommy, now safe at home, had been an unwitting pawn, paid to distribute initial pages before Gideon took over. Hastings moved to restrain her, but Beatrice raised a hidden vial, its contents swirling menacingly. One step and we all burn. Poirot's voice remained calm, an anchor in the chaos. No, madame, your vial is empty. I switched it earlier when you turned to grab the page. A simple sleight of hand, learned from street magicians in my youth. Beatrice's face crumpled as she shook the vial, finding only water. She lunged, but Hastings caught her arms, binding them with a cord from the curtains. As the local constable arrived, summoned by Lyle, Poirot, Hastings, and Isabella stood on the train platform, the detective adjusting his hat. A case most infernal,
but solved. The diary will go to a museum, its secrets preserved without flame. Hastings clapped him on the back. Well done, old chap. Isabella hugged them both. Thank you for the truth. As the train pulled away, St. Mary's Hollow faded into the mist, its ashen past finally laid to rest. And that, dear viewers, concludes the Ashen Diary, pages written in murder. Poirot investigates. If you've enjoyed this tale of mystery and mayhem, hit that like button, subscribe for more thrilling stories, and comment below your favorite twist. Your support means the world to us. Until next time,